Okay, in all these 5 problems, we're going to have a number in front of the x squared. That's the a term. So the first one I'm going to do, I'm actually going to do just out completely by factoring by grouping. So the first thing we have to do is take 2 and multiply it by 32. So 2 times 32 gives you 64. Now that's the number that I'm going to sit there and start to split up. So 64, I'm going to take the numbers, I'm going to break it down. So 1 and 64, 2 and 32, 4 and 16, and we've got 5 doesn't work, 6 doesn't work, so we've got 8 and 8 are the next numbers. So those are the ones that work. I'm going to add them together now. So 1 and 64 is 65, 2 and 32 is 34, 4 and 16 is 20, 8 and 8 is 16. 16 is the one that I want, and I want a positive 16. So those are the numbers I'm going to use. So we'll take the 2x squared plus 16x plus 32, and I'll split it up. So 2x squared, then I have plus 8x plus 8x plus 32. Split it down the middle. I'm going to work on each side now individually. So the 2x squared, so 2x squared goes into 2 and then 2 x's. The 8x is 2, 2, 2, and then an x. So then we circle what's the same. So I have a pair of x's, and I have a pair of 2's. So on this side I have a 2x, and what's left over is x plus 4. This side I'm going to do the exact same thing. So 8x is 2, 2, and 2, and then an x. 32 is 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. If you don't remember how I'm getting these, you can do the factor tree and get these out, or you can just work on them the way that I was doing them. So in this case, I have 3 pairs of 2's. So 3 pairs of 2's comes out to be a positive 8, and what's left over in the first row is an x, and the second row is a 4. At this point, we should be able to see that the 2 parentheses are going to be the same. And now remember, when you're factoring by grouping, we can always check every single step. So like here, the 8x and the 8x goes back to the 16x, so these two are the exact same. Here, 2x times x is 2x squared, 2x times 4 is 8x. 8 times x is 8x, 8 times 4 is 32. So you can check your work as you're going to make sure you're doing the steps correct. Since the 2 parentheses are the same, I'm going to put those together, and I get x plus 4. What's left over goes together as well, and that's 2x plus 8. Since I'm solving for 0, I'm going to take each of these and I'm going to set them equal to 0 now and figure out what the answer is. So the first one is x plus 4 equals 0, so minus 4, so x equals negative 4. The next one is 2x plus 8 equals 0, so I subtract the 8. So I get 2x equals negative 8 and divide by 2. So x equals negative 4. Now they both come out to be the exact same answer, and if you notice, there's only one answer they're asking for. So the answer to this problem is negative 4. We click check answer, and that is the correct answer. Very good. For the second example, what I'm going to do is, I noticed that in this problem I have 3x squared plus 36x plus 81. I can take all 3 of those numbers and divide them by 3. Sometimes if you look at the number in front, if the number in front of the x squared, that a term, if I can divide them all by that number, it makes my problem a lot easier because then I can actually get rid of that number. So 3x squared, so I'm going to take the whole problem and divide it by 3. So 3x squared divided by 3 is just x squared. 36x divided by 3 is 12x, and then 81 divided by 3 is 27. So now I have a lot simpler problem. This is a problem with a as being 1, so we can use the little trick to actually factor, or I can do factoring by grouping. I'm going to use the trick to factor this one though. 27, I'm going to split those up into the numbers, so it's 1 times 27, 3 times 9, and that's it. So we add those together, so I get 28, 3 and 9 is 12. This is the one that I want. So my factors comes out to be x plus 3 and x plus 9. Now, I took out the 3, so I'm going to put the 3 in front originally, so this way the problem can actually go back to my original problem, and I set it equal to 0. Now, 3 can't equal 0, so I'm not worried about that one, but the other 2 parentheses can. So I'm going to set x plus 3 equals 0, solve that one, so x equals negative 3, and x plus 9 equals 0, solve that one, so x equals negative 9. Now, To check this problem, I'm going to do the same thing I did with the other problem. I'm going to plug this back into my original problem, not the one that I got here. Always plug it back into your original problem to make sure that you're actually doing the steps correct and that all your work is correct. So I'm going to do the first one. So I do 3 times negative 3 squared plus 36 times 3, negative 3, and plus 81. So I do exponents first, so negative 3 squared is 9. 36 times negative 3 plus 81. Now I do the multiplication, so I have 27. And then I have negative 36 times 3 would be 90 plus 18 is 108 plus 81. 27 minus 108 is negative 81 plus 81, and that does come out to be 0. So one of my answers is negative 3. So I put in the negative 3 there. Now, I'm going to take on faith that my negative 9 is correct. I've only got one problem done. So if I get this one wrong, it's not that big of a deal, and I can move on. But we're going to assume that the negative 1 is correct, since I did the problem the same way, and the negative 3 was correct. So we'll put that one in there, check answer, and it is correct. So this problem, I have 6x squared plus 12x minus 288. Now, I want to try dividing them all by 6. So just to make my life a little bit simpler. So I have 6x squared, I can divide that by 6. That gives me the x squared. 12x, I know I can divide that by 6, and that gives me 2x. The negative 288, when I divide that by 6, I get is 48. So now I've broken it down to a simpler problem that I can work with. So let's take the negative 48, and I'm going to come up with numbers that multiply to negative 48. So I get negative 1 and 48, negative 2 and 24, negative 4 and 12, negative 6 and 8. And then those are all the numbers. I add them, 47, 22, 8, 2. And I want a positive 2, so those are my numbers. So now we'll use the shortcut method to do this one. And I put the 6 out in front since that's one of them. Then I have x minus 6 and x plus 8. So I set each one of these equal to 0. 6 can't be equal to 0, so I don't have to worry about that one. I do x minus 6 equals 0, add the 6. So x equals 6, x plus 8 equals 0, minus the 8, x equals negative 8. So those are my two answers, so we'll put them in here and see if I got them right. Now, normally you would check these to verify it, but I checked in the last example and I got them right, so I'm pretty confident that I've got this one right. Check answer. And we're done. This problem, I have 5x squared minus 15x plus 10. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out a 5 out of this problem. So I can divide them all by 5. I end up getting x squared minus 3x plus 2. Now, we're going to take 2. 2 breaks down pretty easily. 2 is just 1 and 2. 1 plus 2 is 3, but I want a negative 3, so I need the negative 1 and the negative 2, which would give me the negative 3. So we'll use the shortcut to do this one. I put the 5 down because that one is always correct. Then I do x minus 1 and x minus 2 equals 0. Now I got to find my answer, so I'm going to set each of these parentheses equal to 0. So I have x minus 1 equals 0. So x equals 1, and x minus 2 equals 0. X equals 2. Now, I'm starting to get close to being done with this topic, so I want to be careful, and I want to make sure these are correct. And these numbers aren't too hard to work with. So let's actually plug these in and see if I can get actually 0 out of both these problems. So I do 5, 1 squared, minus 15 times 1 plus 10. 1 squared is 1, so 5 times 1, minus 15 times 1 plus 10. 5 times 1 is 5, minus 15, plus 10, negative 10 plus 10. That does give me 0. Now let's try the other one just to make sure that they're both correct. So we'll plug in the 2. So I have 2 squared minus 15 times 2 plus 10. So 2 squared is 4, so 5 times 4, minus 15 times 2 plus 10. 5 times 4 is 20. 15 times 2 is 30 plus 10. 20 minus 30 is negative 10 plus 10. That does give me 0. So they both do check out and work. So we'll plug those answers in, 1 and 2. And because they both worked, I'm pretty confident that this is the right answer. Check answer, and it is correct. Since I've done 3 with the shortcut method and only 1 with the factor by grouping, and since this is the last one, I'm going to do this one by factor by grouping. Also, it allows me to check my work as I'm going through the whole problem, and since this is my last one, I want to be really careful, make sure that I'm doing this one correct. So for this one, what's 6 times 30 would be 360 actually. So it's going to be negative 360 is what I'm going to actually break down into. Negative 360 is going to have a ton of problems to go through and do. So as we're going to actually come up with these, let's actually add them. So this way we don't have to come up with every possible way to go through and do it. So the first one that we're going to look at is, let's do a 36 and 10. So I do negative 36 and 10. And I chose the bigger number to be negative because my number in the middle is negative. So I know I want to add these to get a negative number. So that's negative 26. Close, but not quite right. So let's come up with another one. So another one, let's do negative 20 and 18. That one's going to give me negative 2. Multiply those, you do get the negative 360. So notice this one's too big, this one's too small. So somewhere in the middle is going to be where. Next one I'm going to try is negative 30 and 12, which when I multiply those do give me the negative 360. And in this case, it gives me the negative 18 that I wanted. So those are going to be my two numbers right there. And it's one of the things when we're dealing with really big numbers that it can get messy and it can get long to actually work out some of these problems. However, working through them allows you to do any type of these problems no matter how complicated the numbers are. And the process is always the same. So we'll do the 6x squared. And then we'll do minus 30x plus 12x minus 60. Now, in this problem, the negative 30x plus the 12x does give me the negative 18x. So far, I can go backwards on my steps, and I'm fine. So now, let's take this problem over here. We're going to split up the first part over here. So let's do it over here. 6x squared is 2 times 3 times x times x. The negative 30x is negative 1, 3, 2, and 5, and then an x. So let's circle the pairs. So I have a 3, I have a 2, and I have an x. So the number that's going to come out is a 6 and an x. And what's left over is x minus 5. Now let's do the other side. So we'll do the 12x, which is 2 times 2 times 3, x. And then the negative 60 is negative 1 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. So now we'll circle our pairs. So I got a pair of 2's and a pair of 3's and another pair of 2's. So I could take actually out 12 out of the side. So I'm going to take out a positive 12. What's left over in the first row is an x, and the second row is a negative 5. Now let's verify that I can go backwards and that I'm still doing this right. 6x times x, 6x squared. 6x times negative 5, negative 30x. 12 times 5, 12x. 12 times negative 5, negative 60. So again, I can go back to the previous step. I know that step's correct, so I can go back to it. My two parentheses are correct, so I probably picked the right two numbers in here. That's how you can check to make sure you've picked the right numbers. So my two parentheses are the same, so I'm going to put those together. So that's the x minus 5. And then what's left over goes together, and that's the 6x plus 12. So now I've factored the problem, but now I have to solve it. So I'm going to set each of these equal to 0. So x minus 5 equals 0, so add the 5. So x equals 5. That's one of my answers. And now I have 6x plus 12 equals 0. So I subtract the 12 from both sides. So I have 6x equals negative 12 and divide by 6. So x equals negative 2. So x equals negative 2. Now, since this is your last problem, you might want to actually check and verify that it's correct by plugging the numbers back in to make sure they get zeros. However, I went back and did all my other steps and checked those, so I'm pretty confident that my answer is correct. So I'm going to put this in, hit check answer. And it's correct, and we've now finished the topic.